Go Joe show with me, Joe. Gotta talk about this. It's technology related and it's kind of a dominating topic for me. Privacy. Facebook versus Apple calling each other out, going to war. Tim Cook calling out Zuckerberg. Zuckerberg calling out Tim Cook. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. It's the Joe Show. So thanks again for tuning into my show. It's a daily show. If you like the content, hit the subscribe button and mash the bell to get a notification every time I upload a new video. And check out some of my other content as well. I would highly appreciate it. In fact, before we jump into this, I just brought it up behind me. Leave a comment too. Let's discuss this because it helps me beat the YouTube algorithm. So like the video, leave a comment, all that shit. All right, let's hop into it here. The first thing he calls out is iMessage. That's an app that Apple, as he quotes, pre-installs and gives their app several advantages that other apps don't have. He says it's the most popular service in the US. I don't know if that's true, if it's the most popular messaging service. I think it's between Facebook Messenger, iMessage, WhatsApp, Telegram, Signal now. There's so many different messengers. I don't think that there's one, and text message, SMS, good old SMS message. So I don't know if he's actually right there. I think he's just saying that to make it sound more dire and play politics here. Zuckerberg also goes on to say that Apple and Facebook are likely to become direct rivals on the next computing platform, referring to their virtual and augmented reality headsets. Facebook already offers VR headsets from its Oculus unit, and both companies are building AR glasses. I think we would expect to see them more of a competitor there as well. He's not incorrect here. They're both building VR headsets, and they both have an interest in VR. The difference here that I would see is that Facebook and Oculus Rift is doing virtual reality, where Apple is really looking to do mixed reality or augmented reality by putting 3D objects into your everyday life through the viewport that is the iPhone. And then they also have their Apple glasses coming. So then eventually their Apple glasses. So technically Apple would be there competing with Microsoft and their HoloLens and not Facebook, or Snapchat and their augmented reality glasses. So I'm not really sure what exactly Zuck is talking about here. I think he's just trying to make some beef. This is what I would call beef marketing, which is actually very effective, calling out your competitors and starting beef, especially if you're viewed as the underdog. The problem here is that Facebook is so goddamn unlikable. I have been against Facebook now for probably 4 years. I think that's how long it's been since I deleted my Facebook account, maybe 2. I don't know, my memory is dog s. But yeah, and everyone kind of likes Apple. Like, Apple leaves you with feel-good vibes. I mean, in the 80s, they did the, like, anti-corporation commercial that's super popular. You can look it up. But Tim Cook recently, getting to it, called out Facebook at this Brussels-based computer privacy and data protection conference. So it was a big data protection and privacy conference that happened just yesterday, I think. And let's listen to some of his speech here. It's 12 minutes long. Maybe we'll listen to the whole thing, maybe not. But he definitely calls out Facebook. So let's
should now take a hard look at how we've answered that question. The fact is that an interconnected ecosystem of companies and data brokers, of purveyors of fake news and peddlers of division, of trackers and hucksters just looking to make a quick buck.
Damn, right away he's already calling out on Facebook. Like, who else are the purveyors of misinformation? Maybe he could be talking about Twitter, but Twitter is trying to take a stance against fake information. I mean, they were labeling tweets in the past. It's what they got in trouble for with Donald Trump, labeling his tweets as maybe containing misinformation. So he's definitely calling out Facebook, who didn't really take any action against this sort of thing.
Is more present in our lives than it has ever been. And it has never been so clear how it degrades our fundamental right to privacy first and our social fabric by consequence.
And he looks pissed right here. Like, he actually looks passionate about what he's talking about here. You can tell that it's definitely hitting a nerve for him. Maybe it's not, he doesn't like being called out by Zuckerberg. Maybe it has, shareholder stuff. Maybe it has to do with protecting their users or upholding Apple's legacy and Steve Jobs' name. I don't really know, but he seems to really be taking this to heart here and really meaning what he's saying, that this is not good for society as a whole and we need to take a stand against it. And I'm with him on this viewpoint.
As I've said before, if we accept as normal and unavoidable that everything in our lives can be aggregated and sold, then we lose so much more than data. We lose the freedom to be human. And yet, this is a hopeful new season, a time of thoughtfulness and reform. And the most concrete progress of all is thanks to many of you.
What he's talking about there is the fact that we give up all of our data to these platforms like Facebook. And there's other platforms that you don't even realize. Oh, shit, you probably heard that. There's other platforms that you don't even realize are tracking you, that you've given yourself to by accepting cookies on websites, by blindly downloading apps, by all sorts of things. They have some sort of tracking pixel and profile on you that's tracking you not only across the internet, across different browsers, across your phone, but it extends beyond that into like Google Maps, products that you use, Gmail. They're sniffing around literally everywhere, creating this profile on you that they're then selling to advertisers for whatever they're going to do, whatever they're going to sell to you, whatever they want to push to you. Honestly, there's two sides of this, right? I sometimes feel like maybe this is okay. What's the harm in being shown products that you enjoy, right? Like, that's actually kind of a more pleasant advertising experience when you're getting ads for shit where you're like, yeah, man, actually I want to buy that. That would be awesome to have. That's a nice ad experience. Where it becomes problematic is when they create user profiles on you and then they feed you propaganda, political propaganda, or just brainwashing, whatever propaganda, anti-vax propaganda. Propaganda is political in nature. But when they start feeding you these viewpoints that you can maybe get influenced by or jump onto, whether it's racism or it's anti-vaccine stuff, or it's that everything has to be racialized. Like, whatever the propaganda is, trying to include a little bit of left, a little bit of right here. Either way, they're making profiles on you on how influenceable you are, and then just feeding you nonsense. So that's what he's talking about when he's saying that you're being tracked. It's not just Facebook tracking you; it's so many hundreds of companies.
Proving cynics and doomsayers wrong, the GDPR has provided an important foundation for privacy rights around the world.
Note there for my American friends watching this, GDPR, I don't know what it stands for. It's like general something data protection. Generalized regulation of data protection. I don't know. But it's a law that Europe passed to try to protect European citizens' privacy. And a lot of it boils on to double opt-ins for things like emails and for cookies, where you have to opt in twice to actually be tracked.
And its implementation and enforcement must continue. But we can't stop there. We must do more.
Damn straight.
And we're already seeing hopeful steps forward worldwide, including a successful ballot initiative strengthening consumer protections right here in California. Together, we must send a universal humanistic response to those who claim a right to users' private information.
That's a shot at Facebook and kind of Google a little bit.
About what should not and will not be tolerated. As I said in Brussels 2 years ago, it is certainly time, not only for a comprehensive privacy law here in the United States, but also for worldwide laws and new international agreements that enshrine the principles of data minimization, user knowledge, user access, and data security across the globe.
I agree with him wholeheartedly here. The U.S. especially needs to get their regulatory ass moving when it comes to data protection. I like his use of data minimalization, meaning that these companies don't need as much data as they're getting from you, so only allowing the minimal amount of data. Also, user accessibility of what data is being collected, all sorts of stuff around data that he's talking about here that I find really interesting and great opportunities for businesses to rise around.
At Apple, spurred on by the leadership of many of you in the privacy community, these have been 2 years of unceasing action. We have worked to not only deepen our own core privacy principles, but to create ripples of positive change across the industry as a whole.
Interesting here that he just said, we have done this. This is a technique, I think it's called laddering, is where you state the things that you've done to claim a higher moral ground than your opponent, thus making them rise up the ladder to meet your standards. Interesting technique. Maybe he meant to do that, maybe not, but yeah, he's pretty much saying we're better than you guys, so come up to our standard.
We've spoken out time and again for strong encryption without backdoors, recognizing that security is the foundation of privacy. We've set new industry standards for data minimization, user control, and on-device processing for everything from location data to your contacts and photos. At the same time that we've led the way in features that keep you healthy and well, we've made sure that technologies like a blood oxygen sensor and an ECG come with peace of mind that your health data stays yours.
Right there, he's talking about on-device processing of data, which means it's not being sent to the cloud where it can be collected. It's happening on your device that you own, so Apple's not receiving that information on some sort of database. It is stored on your phone, so if somebody gets your phone, they can access that data, but it's not being sent to Apple, is what I believe he's saying here. Whereas other companies like Facebook, like Google, your data is sent off into the cloud. That's how they're tracking you with these pixels and other methods. And so he's saying that, for example, in their blood monitor device and their ECG, which come on their Apple Watch, Apple's not getting that data. It's free, it's safe on your phone, encrypted for only you to access.
And last but not least, we are deploying powerful new requirements to advance user privacy throughout the App Store ecosystem. The first is a simple but revolutionary idea that we call the privacy nutrition label. Every app, including our own, must share their data collection and privacy practices.
I think this is a really clever idea, personally. Adding some sort of, quote, nutrition label to let you know what data is being collected from you or what you're opting into, not just that screen that pops up and said, hey, do you want to allow your location to be saved, but actually allowing you to go read the label again easily in user access, see what's being collected on you. I'm very curious to see how this is going to be implemented and if more companies are going to adopt this. I like the whole leading by example mentality that Apple is employing here, again with that laddering position that they've taken. So yeah, I'm for the nutrition, the data nutrition label. I think it's a good thing.
Information that the App Store presents in a way every user can understand and act on. The second is called App Tracking Transparency. At its foundation, ATT is about returning control to users, about giving them a say over how their data is handled. Users have asked for this feature for a long time. We have worked closely with developers to give them the time and resources to implement it. And we're passionate about it because we think it has great potential to make things better for everybody.
There's also a little bit of nervousness here. I don't know if you've looked at his hands while he's been talking, but they are shaking a little bit. So he knows that he's live and that this is a very important thing that he's talking about, and that he is, having shots fired. So either he's hyped up with a little bit of adrenaline because he's calling people out and, putting this big thing out into the world, or he's a little bit nervous. Maybe, before any big public speech, I think anybody gets a little nervous. It's human nature. This ATT thing, I think, is also very important as well. I've thought of several businesses around data privacy that were to give users control back of which data they're sharing with who, and then also make some money off of the opt-in on sharing their data with a company. If I ever make it, I mean, now would be the time to do it, right? Because it's getting more and more popular and more important. But I think this is a very good thing that Apple is doing between the nutrition label and also the ability to access and control how your data is being shared. What that actually looks like, he doesn't say, but it's a good step forward.
Because ATT responds to a very real issue. Earlier today, we released a new paper called A Day in the Life of Your Data. It tells the story of how apps that we use every day contain an average of 6 trackers. This code often exists to surveil and identify users across apps watching and recording their behavior.
This is about just
in this case, what the user sees is not always what they get. Right now, users may not know whether the apps they use to pass the time, to check in with their friends, or to find a place to eat may in fact be passing on information about the photos they've taken, the people in their contact list, or location data that reflects where they eat, sleep, or pray.
Spoiler, they are doing that.
As the paper shows, it seems no piece of information is too private or personal to be surveilled, monetized, and aggregated into a 360-degree view of your life.
What I literally just said.
The end result of all of this is that you are no longer the customer. You are the product.
That's super important for people to realize, and I don't think it gets through a lot of people's big egotistical Instagram obsessed heads. When you're using these apps, you are the product. If you're fine with that, no big deal, whatever. If you want to be a product, some people want to be treated like objects. Some people want to be dogs and walked around on leashes outside in San Francisco. But that being said, a lot of us don't want to be the goddamn product or don't feel like being the product. But you have to realize a lot of these applications that are claiming to make your life easier and are doing it for free, that probably means that you're the product and they're taking your data to sell to the highest bidder, whomever that is and whatever that actually means. Who knows? I actually don't have information on who the highest bidder is and what they're doing with your data, but just the thought of me being sold to the highest bidder is kind of shitty enough.
When ATT is in full effect, users will have a say over this kind of tracking. Some may well think that sharing this degree of information is worth it for more targeted ads. Many others, I suspect, will not, just as most appreciated it when we built a similar functionality into Safari, limiting web trackers several years ago.
Didn't know they did that.
We see developing these kinds of privacy-centric features and innovations as a core responsibility of our work. We always have, we always will. The fact is that the debate over ATT is a microcosm of a debate we've been having for a long time, one where our point of view is very clear. Technology does not need vast troves of personal data stitched together across dozens of websites and apps in order to succeed. Advertising existed and thrived for decades without it.
Yep.
And we're here.
Dude, just like I was saying the other day in my political video, if you go watch it, I think it was the one about they didn't go too far with banning Donald Trump. Yo, before there was Twitter, before there was Facebook, before there was YouTube, the president made addresses on the radio, and then after that had a press chief to communicate with the press to get the message out there. You'd put diverse opinions in a room together, you'd tell them the news, they would go to the respective newspapers and get it out there. There's other ways to get your message across, just like there's other ways to advertise to you all the time. We've existed for hundreds of years without the current use of technology. I think technology is beautiful. I think it's amazing and it empowers us to do awesome things, but it also doesn't mean that we have to be ruled by it.
We're here today because the path of least resistance is rarely the path of wisdom. If a business is built on misleading users, on data exploitation, on choices that are no choices at all, then it does not deserve our praise.
Damn.
It deserves reform.
That was shots fired. That was shots fired directly at Facebook. And I think a little bit of Google too, as I've been saying. Not so much Amazon. I haven't really been taking too many shots at Amazon or like Epic Games. But yeah, that shit is hilarious. We don't deserve to praise those products. I agree with that. Do not be praising these dumb products like goddamn Instagram, WhatsApp, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, all these things. Let's reform them or at least regulate them. Jesus Christ.
We should not look away from the bigger picture. At a moment of rampant disinformation and conspiracy theories juiced by algorithms,
these are definitely shots at Facebook, and I want to be very clear. I'm not talking about censoring. I'm not talking about controlling the internet. It should always be a neutral place. But these things have become pseudo-governmental when they are making decisions on what to show you, what to feed you, how to act politically. They become pseudo-governmental. Facebook, at one point, need I remind you, also tried to make their own currency, which is, I don't know, what nations do. So perhaps it's time that we do break them up, that we do regulate them, because they've gotten a little too big for their britches. That's just something that we have to accept. Also, one thing about Facebook is that it is international. So this is outside of the U.S. This is not just in the U.S. This is outside of the U.S. These are international companies. And what else is international? Goddamn countries, nations. They're become pseudo-nations at this point. So I don't want to, like, sweep it under the rug and be all alarmist and be hyperbolic here, but what he's saying is very important. They're much bigger than I think people realize, and they have a lot more power and influence than people realize. And so it's not about censoring and whatever. It's merely about regulating as a business, because they're becoming their own governmental bodies and nations and making decisions on morals and civics and all sorts of stuff that politics really exists to do. In a democracy, people should be voting on this stuff, not just accepting it willy-nilly in terms of service agreements.
We can no longer turn a blind eye to a theory of technology that says all engagement is good engagement, the longer the better, and all with the goal of collecting as much data as possible. Too many are still asking the question, how much can we get away with? When they need to be asking, what are the consequences? What are the...
Yeah, accountability, man. It's the same thing that we have to do with Trump. The people who raided the Capitol, anyone who was, I guess, looting during the riots last year at Black Lives Matters. Accountability. Like, it's not a hard word. People seem to forget it, but holding people accountable for their actions and the things that they say and the things that they do is very important for a democracy to exist. Is accountability. It's the reason why racists feel emboldened, is because they weren't being held accountable for their bullshit views when Trump was in office. You got to hold these people accountable.
The consequences of prioritizing conspiracy theories and violent incitement simply because of the high rates of engagement? What are the consequences of not just tolerating but rewarding content that undermines public trust in life-saving vaccinations?
That reward.
What are the consequences of seeing thousands of users join extremist groups and then perpetuating an algorithm that recommends even more?
And who's going to hold them accountable? Their peers? That's what Parler tried to do, a council of your peers. Well, it's a problem when your peers agree with your statement or with your sentiment because you're in an echo chamber. When it was all the same type of people in the same place, it's really hard to have an unbiased jury. In court of law, they try to have unbiased juries by doing juror selections and interviews pre-trial. That's so that not everyone has the same opinion, not everybody comes from the same status, and they try to make sure and weed out the crazies, the people who are racist and biased. They try to have a unbiased jury, a trial by an unbiased jury, and that's very hard to do on these platforms, which is why there has to be regulation. Otherwise, you can't do this peer moderated stuff. The only place that works, and I'll give them a shout out, seems to be Reddit, and I don't know why it seems to work on Reddit. Maybe they've held their moderators accountable and they've given them, the moderators, good tools to deal with stuff, but for some reason, and Reddit has had to step in and ban places like r/the Donald, but Reddit apparently has created some sort of weird small microcosm where community managed boards seem to work fairly well. It's not always the case, but they seem to work fairly well compared to places like Facebook and Twitter. And Apple doesn't run a forum, so we're not going to count them.
It is long past time to stop pretending that this approach doesn't come with a cost of polarization, of lost trust, and yes, of violence.
Yep.
A social dilemma cannot be allowed to become a social catastrophe.
Nice reference to the Netflix documentary, huh? Social dilemma.
I think the past year and certainly recent events have brought home the risk of this for all of us as a society and as individuals as much as anything else. Long hours spent cooped up at home, the challenge of keeping kids learning when schools are closed.
Yeah, shout out COVID.
The worry and uncertainty about what the future would hold. All of these things threw into sharp relief how technology can help and how it can be used to harm. Will the future belong to the innovations that make our lives better, more fulfilled, and more human?
I hope they do.
Or will it belong to those tools that prize our attention to the exclusion of everything else, compounding our fears and aggregating extremism to serve ever more invasively targeted ads over all other ambitions?
And another thing I want to point out here, because this is so... It sounds very Luddite-ish, right? Like, hey, we're anti-technology, we're anti-innovation, we're anti these innovations, these whatever algorithms that Facebook has. But I don't think that this is the proper comparison or even a correct comparison. The Luddites were afraid of this printing press and this technology moving forward. And the whole point of this address is not to say, let's halt the progress of technology, let's hide from it, let's break the technology, let's destroy it. But instead, it is, hey, this has gotten out of control and it needs to be reined in a little bit as these platforms have allowed their algorithms to make editorial decisions to give you direct feeds into your brain of content that they deem engaging for you, thus almost brainwashing you and forcing you to stay on their platform for longer in order to be advertised to, when in some cases it's things you like, but in most cases it's things you don't need or it's propaganda. And it just needs to be reined in because it is destroying our humanity, unfortunately. And I don't want to be on the Luddite side of things and say, hey, this is bad. We definitely need to keep moving forward, but we have to move forward while still maintaining some sort of moral standard, with some sort of human touch, some sort of whatever. I'm so excited to have robot arms and to have potentially chips in our brain and be able to upload stuff to the internet. But at the same point, we're still humans, and at the end of the day, life has to mean something. So this is a big, complex topic.
At Apple, we made our choice a long time ago. We believe that ethical technology is technology that works for you. It's technology that helps you sleep, not keeps you up, that tells you when you've had enough, that gives you space to create or draw or write or learn, not refresh just one more time. It's technology that can fade into the background when you're on a hike or going for a swim.
There's definitely a dig at Instagram and TikTok.
But is there to warn you when your heart rate spikes or help you when you've had a nasty fall. And that all of this always puts privacy and security first because no one needs to trade away the rights of their users to deliver a great product. Call us naive, but we still believe that technology made by people, for people, and with people's well-being in mind is too valuable a tool to abandon. We still believe that the best measure of technology is the lives it improves. We are not perfect. We will make mistakes. That's what makes us human. But our commitment to you, now and always, is that we will keep faith with the values that have inspired our products from the very beginning. Because what we share with the world is nothing without the trust our users have in it. To all of you who have joined us today, please keep pushing us all forward. Keep setting high standards that put privacy first and take new and necessary steps to reform what is broken. We've made progress together, and we must make more. Because the time is always right to be bold and brave in service of a world where, as Giovanni Butarelli put it, technology serves people and not the other way around. Thank you very much.
Yeah, the other way around is that we're slaves to the technology, man. We don't want that at all. So picking up back on that Luddite thread that I just kind of went down the rabbit hole on. The Luddite movement was in response, I believe, to the printing press and getting ideas out there, which is kind of where we're at today, right? And the Luddites wanted to destroy the printing presses because they feared that it would either brainwash people or lose jobs, economic repercussions, all sorts of stuff. But the people who believed in the printing press were correct. You should have the printing press, just like we probably should have some sort of social engagement and social media platforms. But that being said, eventually we did have to regulate the journalism industry and the printing industry into some sort of standard, and that is what Tim Cook is talking about here, is setting a standard. I'm on the side of Tim Cook. I'm so anti-Facebook, and I believe that regulators, and not just America but all around the world, need to step up and hold these platforms accountable for what they've created and what their algorithms are serving people. It's very, very important. I hope you learned something while watching this video. I hope you're on my side. Whatever side you're on, let me know in the comments. Let's discuss this because it's a super important and interesting issue. If you like my content, hit that subscribe button and mash that bell, and come back every Tuesday for more technology content. Also check out some of my other videos. I'm all over the place in what I do. Unfortunately, I needed to niche to grow on YouTube, but leave me a comment, like my video, and if you can, share me with a friend. And until next time, I hope you tech something good, because you know it. I love you.